Driving a car can be such a gas. Developers give the green light to a hydrogen-powered future. And we'll filter the facts on the coffee industry, the world's favourite drink from Arabica to whole bean. I'm Martin Stanford. This is Insight. Welcome to Insight. Filling up your car's gas tank could have a whole new meaning under plans to give the green light to environmentally friendly motoring. Hydrogen-driven fuel cells are an alternative to battery-powered electric vehicles, with emissions so clean you can even drink them. Insight's Tig Enright explains.
So you need to put your foot on the brake and then press power. Just let go.
Oh my, that's very graceful.
Like a growing number of new cars, this one is powered by electricity. But unlike most of the electric cars on the road today, this model's electricity is generated within it by combining hydrogen with the surrounding air.
So the car is completely silent, just like an electric car, although I've never driven an electric car before. But otherwise, it just feels completely normal, but with the promise that it will drive so much farther with just one refueling. The question is this the future of motoring?
Mass market manufacturers Hyundai and Toyota believe it is.
The good thing about a fuel cell car, hydrogen fuel car, it basically means that you have a longer range. So as you can see, we will go and fill up in about 3 minutes, and then you can go for 350 miles.
Hydrogen cars have some big-name backers who believe their technology will unleash the real potential of electricity. The hydrogen is stored in tanks where the petrol or diesel would go in a normal car. The gas is fed into a device known as a fuel cell, where it's combined with oxygen from the surrounding environment, creating a chemical reaction, producing the electricity that drives the car's motor. This Hyundai can travel more than twice as far as a battery-powered version on a single refueling.
What happens now?
Well, it's very, very similar to how you fill up at a petrol station. So you just open the cap, you have a little top, you just release it, and basically you have your nozzle there.
But this refuels a lot more quickly than an electric car.
If you compare charging and refueling, yes, this will take 3 to 6 minutes. So clearly that's a big difference between the 4.5 hours that you would expect with a fast charge.
Should we go?
Yes.
Faster refueling and longer range than electric. All that's missing to make this a practical reality is a network of refueling stations.
The idea is to make this car spectacularly normal, so everybody can drive it.
So Sylvie, why is Hyundai pursuing all these technologies, hydrogen, electric, as well as hybrids?
Well, we started with fuel cell hydrogen in 1998, so for us we have started a long time ago, and we think that backing up all the technologies will allow us to have a stepping stone approach.
But you're confident that hydrogen is the way ahead?
We are, because it makes sense, it provides range and is CO2 emission free.
The only emission produced while the car is driving is water, so pure they claim you could drink it. But the concept has its critics, most notably the highest profile backer of battery-powered cars. Elon Musk's Tesla has driven demand for electric cars by making them luxurious and prestigious. But he believes the entire process of creating hydrogen to drive cars consumes more energy overall. But his mainstream rivals disagree.
The simple question that you need to ask is, where are you getting your electricity from? And hydrogen allows us to store and use renewable energy.
Toyota's the company that gave us the Prius hybrid, kind of shaken up the status quo. Do you think, is this really going to become the new status quo?
I think undoubtedly so, because the point of hybrid was that hybrid, we've sold 10 million of them, was designed as a modular system to achieve this goal. And this goal is the ultimate fuel vehicle.
The UK's first public hydrogen pumps went live this year. Oil giant Shell has opened others in California and Germany. and has plans for 8 more countries.
Anywhere in the world where you have an electricity supply and a water supply, you can make fuel. It needs demand, so you need to demystify the whole concept, and that's where we are at the moment.
A big mystery for ordinary buyers will be the price tag. This model will cost you more than $60,000. But hydrogen cars should become cheaper if more of us start to buy them. Ty Genwright reporting for Insight.
Well, to discuss that further, I'm joined in the studio by Anna Porszewski, a scientist and hydrogen researcher at University College in London, and Stuart Masson, who's the editorial director at thecarexpert.co.uk. Welcome to you both. Anna, not only are the cost of the vehicles very high, but if you fill up one of these vehicles with as much hydrogen as the car will take, that's going to cost you about $100 or something. It's no cheaper than petrol.
Yeah, the cost of refuelling is currently quite high. That's to do with the infrastructure surrounding hydrogen. There's currently not very many hydrogen refuelling stations publicly available.
Is it expensive to make or contain?
That's 2 different questions there. It's not particularly expensive to make. Unfortunately, though, around 97% of hydrogen currently on the market is made from fossil fuels rather than green energy processes. So although we speak of hydrogen as being a green technology, actually it's not so green if you look further up the food chain.
And that means availability is a real problem right now, Stuart, isn't it? I mean, the UK's not got many filling stations. I guess that's replicated around Europe.
Half a dozen in the UK at the moment. So when you compare petrol stations, where there's about 8,500, and there are currently about half a dozen publicly accessible hydrogen stations, it makes it difficult to justify for a consumer to buy a hydrogen car today.
And the high capital cost, of course, that's a negative too. What about the driving experience? Does the car perform as well as any other kind of car?
Yeah, the driving, it's an electric car to drive. So it has all the same benefits as a battery-powered electric vehicle. It's very smooth, it's very quiet, the power is instantaneous. The benefit it has over electric car is it can go a lot further before you have to stop and refuel.
But range is still an issue. Because once you're out of hydrogen, you're out of hydrogen.
That's
you're
correct.
going nowhere.
Yeah, the range isn't a problem. It's actually finding another station to fill up at, because at the moment, as I said, there's about half a dozen. They're hoping there might be about 60 by 2020. That will start to help.
Right.
But we're still early days.
What about safety concerns, Anna? Hydrogen, if I remember my schoolboy chemistry, is quite flammable.
That's right. From your schoolboy chemistry, you'll remember that it burns with a squeaky pop. That's a small amount of hydrogen. If you've got a large amount of hydrogen, it's actually quite a loud bang. But this is one of the problems with hydrogen research, the public perception around hydrogen. Because actually hydrogen in a car can be safer than conventional gasoline fuels. There was some research that came out of the University of Miami a few years ago, and they actually set 2 gas tanks on fire, one filled with hydrogen and one filled with conventional gasoline. And they filmed it, and what they found was that the hydrogen flame, because hydrogen is such a light gas, what you get when you puncture a fuel tank is just that a flame flares upwards, compared to a conventional car where your petrol is going to sink onto the ground, catch fire and then burn you from underneath. So they found that actually the hydrogen car didn't even really get that warm inside compared to the gasoline car, which was a complete wreck by the end of the experiment.
Right, and similarly with leaks, it's lighter than air, isn't it? So leaks tend to go up and dissipate quite quickly.
That's right, yeah. And the Toyota Mirai, for example, one of the cars on the road at the moment, hydrogen cars, that has a huge number of safety mechanisms in there to try and prevent venting of hydrogen.
What do the scientists need to do? What does your generation of scientists need to do to try and get this supply chain costs down, to make it an easier to produce cars that are going to be fueled this way?
So one of the major costs in a hydrogen car is the fuel cell component. That's the part that takes hydrogen and oxygen to combine it into water and electricity. These components have very expensive catalysts in them in order to make that process happen, usually made of platinum, which is a very expensive metal. So researchers are trying to reduce the number of expensive metals like that in the components of the car in order to drive costs down.
And what about because that is a catalytic process going on, what about the longevity of the process? I mean, do the cells only have a finite life cycle?
Not really.
Or as far as we know, as long as you put hydrogen in, you'll get the electricity out?
As far as we know, the fuel cells have very good longevity.
Right, but again, that will be a concern, wouldn't it, I suppose, for motorists who want a car to last a good 3, 4, 5 years. They don't want to have to keep you know, changing major components.
That's correct. It's very much like we've had with battery-powered electric vehicles 5 years ago, and it's improving every year. Public confidence is getting higher, infrastructure is getting better. It snowballs and it gets better, but at the moment, it's a concern.
And do you think there is something of a rivalry from what you see between the proponents of the battery technology and hydrogen or other technologies here, or is there a move that everyone's trying to look beyond hydrocarbons?
There is some rivalry between factions who believe one way is better than the other.
I'm thinking
getting
Mr.
an
Musk,
electric
of course,
vehicle.
who loves
Elon
to
Musk
diss
and-
the hydrogen idea, doesn't he?
It's not really an either-or situation. In the same way that today you can go out and buy a petrol car or you can buy a diesel car. They both have strengths and weaknesses, but one will suit you more than the other. It's going to be the same sort of thing eventually.
Are there better use cases applied to one technology or another? I've seen public transport buses, for instance, on the roads, boasting the fact they're powered by hydrogen. Why do they work, whereas the car is still so frighteningly expensive?
Well, one of the major problems with hydrogen is, as we've already discussed, the infrastructure surrounding it, so the availability of refuelling stations. For a fleet of buses, you only need one refuelling station for that whole fleet of buses. The same can be said for forklift trucks. These kind of vehicles that travel many, many miles but always come back to the same depot. So that's why those sorts of applications have been a real gateway into the hydrogen power technology.
But certainly the engines or the fuel cell production can be scaled up to quite a sizable vehicle, needing a lot of energy to drive it.
Absolutely. When we talk about a fuel cell, we're really talking about a stack of fuel cells, so many, many lined up together. And there's no limit to the number that you can stack up
Really?
together. So, yes, so that's why buses and large vehicles are equally as possible with hydrogen.
You must have then a weight performance problem, haven't you? Because each cell weighs a bit.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, but the power that they produce can easily carry their own weight.
So what's the next step forward here? Do you think the public are really going to get on board with all this? Or, I mean, £60,000, probably $100,000, I suppose, depending on exchange rates. That's a lot to buy for a family run-around car, isn't it?
It is, absolutely.
However green you want to be.
Absolutely, and for a consumer, a private individual at the moment, it's not there yet in terms of being economically viable. It will happen. It's a bit of a chicken and egg situation. Buyers don't want to buy cars until there's infrastructure. Private companies don't want to develop the infrastructure until there's a market. So it will take government investment, who are they're the ones who are going to have to actually foot the bill in the short term to get to the tipping point.
And do you see in the research area, is government interested enough in this to encourage researchers to keep going?
Yeah, there's a huge amount of government investment currently into green energy technologies in general and hydrogen as well. Yeah.
That's a good sign. We'll have an update very soon. Anna and Stuart, thank you both very much.
Thank
Thank you very much.
This is Insight. Coming next, the world's most popular drink. How much do we really know, though, about coffee?